All right, what is up, guys? I hope you're having a fantastic day. We are a week away from the Alpha 2 doors opening up and getting in there to test, and I am very excited about it. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to experiencing this new testing phase with the rest of the community. I've talked about this before. This is a very exciting time. So exciting that I have a potato on screen that's going to dance, because nothing says serious and taking yourself seriously like a potato with a sword and shield on screen. That's just my opinion on it. Regardless, today's video, we are going to be talking about some of the doom and gloom that's been happening in the space. And I wanted to, provide perspective. That's my goal, was to provide perspective on this and, maybe talk some people off a ledge, because while there are quite a few people excited about Alpha 2 coming out with tempered expectations as to what it could be, obviously their server functionality, it may not go very well. But there are other people that believe that potentially this game will die during Alpha 2 launch. And the theory is that if it has poor performance, if everybody crashes, they lag out, they bug out during the Alpha 2 test, the fear is that bigger content creators are going to go on YouTube and they're going to do the YouTube shock face meta, the shocking state of Ashes of Creations Alpha 2. And they're going to clickbait a bunch of videos, and they are going to provide a bunch of negativity, and nobody will show up to the game, and the game just dies on the spot. That's the belief. That's the theory that I have heard, and people are very, very worried about the game's release for this reason, which is kind of surprising to me. It's kind of surprising to me that, people are worried so much about that, because we already have recent history of other games not reacting to that. And so I wanted to provide a couple examples for you guys and show you guys what I'm talking about, and attempt to identify, what this entire situation is and why this moment seems like it's so big when it's really not as big as you think it might be. So let's dive into it. I went and I did some research, and I found a game that had 3 years of early access open development, and they did quite well. But it started off poorly. And I wanted to go back to the first year of their early access when they were in the alpha, more rough state, and see what people were saying about the game at the time. I found this post back in 2020. I am pissed off. I paid 60 euros for a crash. I had all playing 10 hours with no problems, and then a big crash. Next person comments, and he says, I can just say congrats for paying money for the right to be a tester. In the past, people got paid for doing that. Also, congrats for no crashes for a full 10 hours. I have a crash or two each hour. He then goes on to say, I consider this an alpha stage. In some ways, it's more advanced than that, but then the massive list of bugs, the missing core features like classes, races, etc., and incorrect rule set implementation make it feel a lot more as an alpha than a beta. Somebody else comments, it's not really a traditional alpha or beta. It's the first act of a game, probably 25%, something like that. It only has half the classes that are planned and is missing a few races. Also, the current max level is capped at 4, but I think the first act is pretty much done, just needs balancing and polishing. Not sure if they intend to add much more to the first act. If you're expecting to be able to play the whole story here, you won't be able to, and likely won't be able to until the game fully releases. But I got a kick out of seeing paid for the right to be a tester, because I've seen that comment a lot on my YouTube channel. I've seen it a lot. And this game, I'm sure quite a few of you know, this is Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 won Game of the Year. They had 3 years of early access open development. They had buggy core features when it first launched. A lot of people saw the vision, of course, but a lot of people did not. They didn't like the state that the game was in. They were so unhappy that they went to the forums like this guy did. And it still won Game of the Year because through iteration and improvements in open development, the team worked on making a great game, and the game is really polished. Now, I'm sure if I asked you guys, all of you, every single one of you watching this video right now, if you haven't played Baldur's Gate 3, would you consider it? If your answer is yes, I highly recommend it. I think it's great. If your answer is no, for those of you guys that say it's a no, I can almost guarantee that none of you are going to use the first year of their early access alpha development as a reason to why you're not playing Baldur's Gate 3. You may not like the genre. You may not like turn-based combat. You may just not be, it's not your type of game, right? This isn't the type of game you normally get into. But none of you, and I feel very confident in saying this, none of you are like, well, yeah, but back in 2020, during the alpha state, during early access, it was buggy and whatever. And I know it won Game of the Year, and I know it's really good now, but that point was the point that they needed to make or break this game. And they broke it. I don't care what they did afterwards. I'm not coming back. How ridiculous does that sound? I think it sounds insane to me, personally. because nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing that. They're looking at the game based on what it is, not on what it was. Now, I know we are going to have furious typers in the comment section talking about how I'm comparing an MMORPG to a single player-based game. I'm talking about development versus development. Let's talk about some MMORPGs, okay? We'll have a like-for-like comparison. Let's talk about Throne and Liberty. I've been following Throne and Liberty since the beta last fall, and it was not well received. We don't have to go into too many details on it, but they had a couple of beta releases under NDA. They opened it up to a bunch of people, and literally everything was unliked by the community. The combat was very poor. It was very janky. People didn't like the AFK leveling experience where your character runs around while you're not playing and levels up. Like, what was the point in that? It was an entire loop that existed in the game, and so people were very unhappy about that. The game performed pretty well. It was in UE4. They had a lot of that going for it, but it's also pay to win. And so people were, a lot of people are very, very negative when it comes to pay to win games. And so the beta wasn't released well at all. And it had all of the big content creators looking over it, reacting to other content creator videos, making videos talking about how Throne and Liberty has been around for 13 years, at that point, 12 years in development, and it is a mess. It is not very good. And I think it was the lead creative director came out and did an announcement and said, hey, we heard your feedback. We heard what you're complaining about. We're going to make a lot of fixes. In 2 months, this game is going to go live in Korea with all the fixes in place. And I looked at that and I was like, there's no way. There's no way you're going to have solid, good fixes in a 2-month period to where all of a sudden you're going to fix all the issues that are wrong with the game. And so the game released to Korea. I tried the Korean version. I got an account and I decided to try it out for myself. I actually had quite a bit of fun. I had enough fun to where I was going to wait for the world release to where I could just grind and level up a character. If I don't have to grind multiple times on multiple characters across multiple accounts, I'm not going to. And I was of the belief that the game was going to release early summer at that point in time. But it didn't stop getting negative publicity from the community. I am not a large content creator. There were videos from Lazy Peon, there were videos from Force Gaming over the early part of the year and through the summer talking about the janky combat, talking about a lot of the issues not being fixed. Lazy Peon even brought up in one of his videos. I'll provide a link in the description if you guys want to check it out. But he talked about how during the Q1 profits report by NCSoft, they didn't even talk about Throne and Liberty. Now imagine you're trying to talk to your shareholders and you're trying to talk up all the money you're making, and you just released an MMORPG and you're not going to bring it up. Why not? It had to have flopped. And so Korea, Throne and Liberty, was not received well. It was not received well at all.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would. But I legally can't. But I've considered it.
All the negativity you could imagine over the summer from large content creators on YouTube, not received well at all. It just released 2 weeks ago to the world. Still with pay to win, still with a lot of these same issues. And it got 350,000 concurrent users during the first week. And I think it's still over 200,000 right now. Now, a lot of people will look at this and they'll say this is a failure because this is an Amazon Gaming Studios release. New World released with 900,000, 950,000. They had almost 3 times the CCU. And I do agree, relative to some of the greatest releases of all time, it is a failure. But you have to keep in mind that the concurrent users is only Steam. This game is also open to console, Xbox, and PlayStation. Now, we don't know what the population for those numbers are. MMORPGs have always been cagey about their overall population, which is just so freaking frustrating. It's tough to find numbers. But regardless, even if you want to wipe it out and say that there are exactly 0 players on console playing Throne and Liberty, 350,000 is more than enough to generate a population. Players are going to go into Throne and Liberty, and they are going to decide for themselves if this game is worth playing for them. And it's up to Throne and Liberty, the game. But nobody is deciding on whether or not they're going to play Throne and Liberty right now based off of the janky beta release from last year. Nobody is. And so the game is going to live or die based off of what the game currently is. And it brought in players. Players are still willing to go try it out. If you look at the first week release of World of Warcraft, thank you so much, Jamie Chaos, for finding this article. Blizzard announced that their first week of World of Warcraft, they had 250,000 concurrent users. Jamie found a couple other ones. BDO had 100,000, for instance. So 350,000 is more than enough if the game is good. Not saying Throne of Liberty is good. I don't know how the players are going to appeal to it over time, but it didn't fail because of a poor beta release. And so when you look at this, and we look at this holistically from the outside looking in, this is all recency bias, right? This is all in our own heads. All of us, me, you, everybody, because we are living in the now, this is the most important point. Now, there is no denying that Alpha 2 is the most important date for Ashes of Creation and for Intrepid to date. This is, as of right now, this is the biggest release that they are going to come out with. But this is a fraction of the number of players we are going to see in Beta 1 and Beta 2, and probably for the live release. This is a portion. And so the comparison I would make here is, if you guys have ever seen the movie 300, there's a point where the 300 soldiers are standing on top of the cliffs, and they're watching all these ships crash and all these soldiers dying in this big, huge storm, and they're celebrating because they think that they're going to win, and it's just over right there. And they wake up the next morning and there's tens of thousands of soldiers on the beach, because literally the people that died on those shores that night were just a fraction of the overall army. Alpha 2 is a fraction of Beta 1 and Beta 2. It's I'm not saying it's like a tenth or anything, but it is a much smaller piece of the pie. Beta 1, Beta 2 will be much larger. They will be much bigger at that point in time. When we get there, we're going to look back at Alpha 2 and be like, yeah, like this is the big day. This is the big day where everything changes, and we're going to do this narrative all over again. Like, hey, Beta 1, if this is a poor release, it's going to impact the game in a hugely negative way. And it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the game was, it matters what the game is. For example, New World's going through their 10th audition right now to try and keep a player base. They have failed every step of the way. 2021, terrible launch, right? 2022, slightly better launch, not very good retention, not enough content. 2023, much better content, better retention, better game. Ignore the player base for an entire year to do a console release and basically piss off all of PC. All these things have happened for New World in the last couple of years, and I wouldn't be surprised if they have 100,000 concurrent users counting console with their latest patch, because it doesn't matter what happened last year, it matters what the game is now. Are people going to have fun playing now? If you look at Final Fantasy XIV, Final Fantasy XIV historically had a very, very bad first release. It was so bad that they took down the servers for over a year to repair them, to rebuild the game from scratch. They were just like, no, like this is awful, we're going to redo it. And when you look at Final Fantasy XIV, I personally don't play it. I don't play it because I want to play more PvP based games. Final Fantasy XIV doesn't scratch that itch for me, but my decision making has never been, I'm not playing Final Fantasy XIV because it released poorly. My decision making has always been, the content doesn't look like it's for me. And I know I'm not trying to upset anybody. That's just my personal preferences. I don't think anybody out there is looking at it and they're like, well, yeah, it released terribly a long time ago, and who cares if it's good now? But that was the deal breaker before. That's just not how people function. This recency bias happens with everybody. Right now, this is a big deal. But you know what's going to be bigger than Alpha 2? Phase 2 of Alpha 2. You know what's bigger than the Alpha 2 release date? Phase 3 of Alpha 2. You know what's bigger than all of that? Beta 1, Beta 2, and the game release. Those are all just bigger and bigger portions of the game. They're bigger days. They're going to be bigger days than what this is. And when we get to those days, we're going to look back and we're going to say, who cares about this? Who cares about Alpha 2? Alpha 2 didn't matter. Alpha 2 didn't impact the game. Beta 2 is the one that matters, guys. Beta 2 is the one that's going to make or break the game. And we're going to rinse and repeat all over again. And then we're going to get into this. We're going to hopefully get into the game. The game's going to go live. We're going to be like, this next DLC is what's going to make or break the game, boys. This next DLC is what's going to happen. But that's not how MMORPGs function. They don't die. They go down and they go up, and they exist for forever as long as people want to fund them. So, yeah, hopefully I provided some perspective on this. Obviously, I am not saying that Alpha 2 isn't a big day. It absolutely is. It is the biggest release date that they have so far. I hope that it releases to a point to where it's received well, and retention for having people to get in and test is good. But at the same time, it doesn't really matter so much what the first couple days, couple weeks are. It matters on how they improve off it. It matters on how quick the fixes come in, how good the fixes are. Because, if we crash for the first couple weeks, for the first month, it's going to be unfortunate. A lot of people are going to go away. They get it fixed and everything's up and running and everything's stable, and they have a good, steady cadence of new content to come on and test. People are going to slowly come back. And if they're having fun, they're going to come back and they're going to keep playing. And that will build from there. And so, yeah, all I'm going to say is let's get to Alpha 2 in about a week. I'm looking forward to it. And I hope to see you there, either in the game or, on stream if you guys want to just come check it out. A lot of people will be streaming it. It has no NDA. So if you didn't buy a key, you can feel free to check it out. You can feel free to check it out for free and, see what the hubbub is. So I'm going to end this video here. If you guys have any questions or comments, please provide in the comment section below and I will do my best to answer it. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Have a nice day.